My guest today is the UK's most successful female recording artist ever. I've come to a remote corner of North Wales to meet Annie Lennox. Now, she's never fitted the pop star stereotype. She's always shunned the celebrity circuit, but she has consistently used her fame to get things done for causes that she believes in. And is that a trade-off which works? Annie Lennox, welcome to HARDtalk.
Thank
you. Now, a few years back, one of the music channels in the United States voted you, and I'm quoting, the greatest white soul singer alive. And I want to start by tracing back the roots of your music. Where was your soul forged?
Ooh, well, I'm Scottish, obviously, and I think that has influenced me tremendously in the sense that my father was a bagpipe player, and I used to listen to him practicing. And there's a form of music in the pipe tradition called pibroch, and it's what the pipers used to play as a lament after the battle. And I think it's very, very similar to deep blues. It's about pain, it's about expression of grief. And I kind of tuned into that. That's
an extraordinary connection, because you're from Aberdeen, the granite city. Some would say a grey city with those lowering skies and, you know, frankly, pretty cold and wet a lot of the time. And yet, you had that association, you feel, in your soul with the deep south of the United States?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think that soul is colourless. It's free of our skin colour. Soul is something intangible that we can all connect with. And music is a vehicle through which one expresses those deeper, more invisible aspects of oneself. So, yes, I think that music transcends all those kind of boundaries of race or culture or creed. You know?
And your father, as well as playing the bagpipes, I mean, he was a shipyard worker.
He was,
and
yeah.
it wasn't a life that materially was particularly well off. Did your parents really push your music?
In the sense that they saw that I had a musical capacity, because, you know, I used to be able to pick tunes out on a little toy piano when I was about 3.
Really?
And so, and sing a lot. I always sang, and my family sang as well. And so they did encourage that, absolutely, but it was curtailed because we didn't have a lot of money, and I would have loved to have had dance classes, and I would have loved to have done a lot more.
And when you sang, did singing from an early age, did it sort of transport you? Did it take you to a different place?
It does. It does.
I want to get to your pop music, because you did go
yes.
and you studied music to a certain extent, but clearly what took over was your ability to deliver incredibly catchy pop tunes, memorable tunes, and to sing in a very haunting way. But it seems to me there's a duality about the music we associate with you. I mean, the music is, you know, you want to dance, you want to sing it, but at the same time, if you think about some of the lyrics you're singing, they're very bleak.
Yes, that's right.
It's odd in a way that you put those two different things together.
Well, it was fairly deliberate on my part. It was quite conscious, because I think that music is this incredible vehicle for expression, and any artistic person is usually at odds with themselves. So part of my development was trying to find out, who am I, what am I doing here, what do I really think, what do I really feel, where do I belong, all of these issues. And through writing and performing music and recording music, I found a particular vehicle. And it's very simple. I mean, music can be anything you want it to be. It can be the sublime to the ridiculous, to the most painful, to the sweetest, softest lullaby. I mean, it can be a whole variant of things. And I found that a tremendous amount of solace and power, and yeah.
What you're saying is fascinating, because yes, music can be so many different things, and it can have so many different tones, and yet you entered a business, the pop business, which wants to package.
Oh, it certainly
wants to
does.
Create commodities, and it wanted to, in a sense, create a commodity of Annie Lennox.
Well, of course. I mean,
how did you cope with that?
A lot of fisticuffs.
but fisticuffs. On HARDtalk, you know, I've never had a guest actually.
Yeah, well, But you've never had me on HARDtalk.
Well, that's true. But I suppose what I'm getting at is for all the toughness that I sense inside you, did you feel in control of what you were doing, really?
Well, it's actually, sometimes it's fisticuffs and sometimes it's just trying to take the reins. And sometimes it wasn't just because somebody was trying to manipulate you. Sometimes they were just plain incompetent. So, you know, it went from one thing to another. And if you're an artist, you want your expression to be authentic and absolutely as much as you possibly can to be as true to how you envisage it to be. When you're working, you know, on the one hand, a young aspiring musician.
And a woman. And I want to talk a little bit about that too.
Later,
yeah, all right.
Lots to talk about with that. But what I mean to say is, as a young aspiring musician, the one thing that you wanted, and probably still would like to have these days, was a record deal. Mm. So, you know, we're odd bedfellows, the corporate world. Well, it wasn't the corporate world back in the day. Mm. It was the music industry. That's a different thing. And, you know, I did feel very much at odds with those corporate bedfellows eventually. And one tries to do one's thing with the facility of the advance that they will give you, that you will have to repay, and lots of it will be sliced off, and a little portion of it might come to you, and you'll be saying, thank you so much, I'm only really in it for the music.
Well, I don't want to complicate matters too much, but let's talk about the woman thing too, because, you know, you very striking woman in music, and part of the deal, seems to me often in pop music, is that you know, you are sold with sexiness as part of the agenda in the pop music business. You always were determined to have your own style. Some called it androgynous, you know, it was the boyish haircut, it was the suits. Was that your effort to say, I'm not playing that game?
Yes, absolutely.
Did it work?
It was also a statement, you know, because, I mean, think about the punk ethos and the punk era. When you had nothing, you could take a plastic bag and wear it and spike your hair up and say, I exist, I am an entity, and I don't have to go with this flow, I can go against the grain, I can be my own self. I suppose subliminally I was saying, I'm with a man, this is my counterpart, me and Dave Stewart, and he's a man, I'm a woman, but we're together in this, and I'm as strong as him, and I'll wear a suit, damn it, and I won't be defined by my gender. Yeah. Yeah.
And the maybe extra twist of complication is that you and Dave Stewart had been in a relationship, and obviously during Eurythmics you weren't, but people always wondered about that, you know, who was in control.
People always do, don't they?
They certainly do. And people like me in chairs like this, particularly. So there we are, wondering, and we're still wondering...
Quickly, get to the prurient interest bit as fast as possible. Let's get it over with.
Well, prurient, maybe. All right, prurient.
There's a word for you.
How did it work, the Dave Stewart relationship? It had ended as a partnership romantically, but it was still an incredible musical partnership. How easy was it to keep it going?
No, it was very difficult, very painful. It's always difficult when you've been intimate with someone and loved them very deeply and it's broken apart. But Dave and I both knew that our destiny, if you like, without being too florid about it, was about our deep interest in making music together. And we'd been through such a lot, and we weren't just going to abandon each other because our romantic lives didn't work. So it was tough.
Yeah, and
what do you think, folks?
Well, you struck a nerve with me when you talk about prurience, because, you know, interviews like this can get prurient, and I'm going to ask you something now which is very personal, and, you know, you feel free to tell me to stop if you want. But we've been talking about the difficulties of making your own way in the business and of being a woman in the music business. It did get even more intense for you because you established a new relationship with an Israeli film producer, and in 1988, at the absolute height of your musical success, you became pregnant and you lost a baby. And I'm just wondering how in this goldfish bowl of high profile sort of celebrity industry, how you coped with that.
Well, how does one cope with a very deep, tragic personal loss in a goldfish bowl is a very good question, not only for me, but for a lot of other people who have to face this whole industry of celebrity, which is cannibalistic and constantly there. I withdrew, ostensibly, for quite some time, you know, and coped in my own way. But I guess what happens when you have something very strong, an experience like that, is that you eventually either break completely or you turn it into something positive. And for me, that was a life-changing experience because it made me realize that actually we are all on that very fine tightrope. We're all human, you know, all of us. And also that I suddenly realized, wow, this has happened to me, but there are millions of other women that this is happening to on a daily basis. Not only that they're experiencing the death of a baby, but that children perhaps lose their mothers or their fathers, or death, you know, death. It's all around us. That is our human condition.
Did you know, going through that you would not break? Did you always have that strength, that feeling that, you know, I will get through this, or was it not as clear to you as that?
No, I think at times you touch the bottom, don't you? You can touch the bottom. And when you touch the bottom, you say, that's the bottom, and I don't think I want to stay here. So how can I get out? How can I do that? And it's not always easy because, you know, as much as one would like to get out of a tunnel of grief, it's not possible. You're there. So you have to cope with it, and you cope with it on an hourly basis, on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis. And, you know, people say, oh, you'll get over it, whatever it is, whether it's a loss of a baby or a mother or a friend, you'll get over it. And you say, well, that's really insensitive. I mean, I don't want to get over this. This is real for me. It's a huge learning curve in life's hard lessons.
And was that period in your life part of your decision to, in a way, broaden your horizons? I mean, you said what you've learned over years is that, you know, your suffering at that time was part of a much wider human experience, that so many people suffer in so many ways. Did that take you to what I also want to talk about, which is your campaigning work?
Looking back reflectively, I can see how that informed me, because it expanded my sense of what it is to be a mother, what it is to be a woman in this world, and that there's that incredible sort of equality that comes when, you know, any pregnant woman or any woman with children can meet another woman in the park. It doesn't matter which social strata they come from. You have a child, you feel, we know each other. And you have that sense of very fundamental wish to love and to protect unconditionally children.
And what took you to South Africa and to a particular interest in and determination to help kids with HIV/AIDS in South Africa?
Well,
what took you there?
The initial reason was an invitation to perform at the launch of Nelson Mandela's 46664 Foundation, which was in Cape Town in November of 2003. And that was, looking back on it now, that became another aha moment for me, a revelation, a turning point, if you like. Because through that experience, all the artists who had performed were invited directly into people's homes, in townships, directly into orphanages, hospitals, clinics, wherever we wanted to go. When you go to places where you have chronic poverty, you know, as a tourist, you're not likely to go into the township and say, hello, I'm a tourist, I'd like to see what the AIDS pandemic looks like. But in the context of being an artist, under the auspices of an HIV/AIDS foundation, one has a passport to enter. And that was when I had a kind of massive paradigm shift. Because although I've been brought up in a working class environment and I thought I understood a little bit about a kind of poverty, I hadn't really seen the face of poverty and looked it really in the eyes. I hadn't really seen chronic, endemic poverty and what that looks like. And my God, I saw that it is women that carry that burden.
And particularly, you're talking about communities ravaged by HIV. And what I want to do is just to show everybody, or give everybody a sense of, when I use the word ravage, what it can do to people, individuals and communities by looking at one of the videos you've made for the Sing campaign, which you founded. So let's look at the video now. It's about one particular boy's story, the boy called Kanye.
This is Bufan and East Lille. Two 8-year-old boys from a tiny village in South Africa. Today, they're visiting their best friend, Kanye. Kanye wasn't in school today. He was at home with his granny, who cares for him and his little brother. Until just a few months ago, Kanye looked like any other little 8-year-old boy. Then he got tuberculosis, and it has now reached his brain, leaving him like this. Now he can't walk or even talk. He can only feel. He was born HIV positive. He has AIDS, and his body is simply too frail to fight the TB.
Through the pain, the honest question.
If Kanye's HIV had been diagnosed sooner, he would most likely be alive today.
It's an extraordinarily powerful film. What do you want people to do with it, you know, when they watch it?
I want them to understand that there are millions of children like Kanye who are born with HIV that don't have access to medication, that don't have access to treatment, that don't have access to good nutrition or a future. And I'd like that to be different.
The journalist in me immediately sort of has questions for you, questions about the complexity of the HIV/AIDS story in South Africa, the difficulty maybe of being a famous white woman going to a country where one can argue, and people have, that over years the South African ANC-led government has failed to pursue the most sensible, effective strategies to fight HIV/AIDS. Do you feel that you can enter that debate as a white woman? Can you make noise about what you might see as the failings of a black government?
Absolutely. I don't see why the colour of my skin should make any difference whatsoever.
But it might to some South Africans.
Yes, it might, absolutely, but that doesn't stop me. And in fact, my gender is colourless as far as I'm concerned. And women of my, people of my gender don't necessarily have a voice. And I have a voice, and I want to use it.
And I suppose the other thing that we've gotten used to is the degree to which, there are famous people who, and I'm going to sound cynical now, but some of whom helicopter in, they make the right noises, and they garner some publicity. And, one shouldn't doubt that their heart's in the right place, but, the commitment perhaps isn't particularly deep or long term. Are you different?
Yes.
And where does this go next for you?
When I took part in the Make Poverty History campaign back in 2005, what I understood was, if you're going to stand there and spout off about this issue, you better be committed and be there for the long term, because I don't actually believe that in the long term poverty will ever be made history. But what you can do is contribute. I've done many things in my life, and I've had all the benefits of the education system here and the national health, and I've come from very little to having so much, as well as the platform that I have, and I intend to use it. That's what I'm doing. I'm committed to it. And I understand your question about celebrity, and I completely share it. I'm also very cynical about those who helicopter in. Of course. But you know what the double cynicism is? That the media will not come to an event for an NGO, let's say, unless they've got the celeb. And I find that really ironic. It's pathetic.
And you say you do it your own way and you do it from the heart, and goodness knows I don't doubt that for a second, but you can't isolate yourself from the politics around you.
That's right.
And whether it be
in
South Africa, your decision to suggest that Pope Benedict XVI is wrong to send a message to people which says that still condoms are wrong, or whether it's in another different context where you chose to join a humanitarian rally in support of the people of Gaza. a different situation, but one that is politically highly charged, and led to you receiving an awful lot of criticism. I mean, these are decisions you take which have a political element.
Of course. I'm not naive enough to think that they don't. I know that it's contextual. But
it's a very delicate line then you tread.
It's a very delicate line.
Because you don't want to be political, you want to stress the humanitarian, and yet, you know, you raise political issues for many people in saying what you say.
That's right, absolutely. Going on the march in January of the year before.
This is the Gaza march,
This is the march, yes. Knowing that there were over 1 million people in that contained space, knowing that they were just about to be pounded from the air, from the land and from sea, and knowing that half of those people were children and young people and women, or mothers of children, I didn't think that that was a particularly helpful long-term solution to peace.
And
to finding peace.
And yet, you know, you got condemned in sections of the Israeli press. There were blog sites and there were message boards that were furious
that said
with
I
you.
was
And I mean, just to quote one, just to give you a flavour of the response that some Israelis had to what you said. You know, how dare she, said one. I have spent months running to a shelter with my family thanks to Hamas's rockets, and she criticises my military from the safety of central London.
Yes, absolutely. Of course. I mean, you make a statement and it will be taken and interpreted, and when you have people who are in both sides, of course, and I always qualified it by saying those rockets should not have gone into Sardot, and that people who are affected by a suicide bomber on a regular basis are not going to love the people behind that. So it's an extremely complicated, polarized situation. I made my contribution just to say, woo, this is not the way forward for lasting peace.
And a final thought on the music. You want to keep doing new stuff, different things. Where's it going to take you next, do you think?
Ooh, it's taking me... I'm doing some recording now that is really beautiful. And you see, I'm out of contract, so I'm really, really free. And that's really nice. And I have a website, and I love that. I do lots of blogging. And so I sort of step out sometimes from behind my singing voice into my speaking voice so that people actually know there was a brain in there, and there are words that do come out and they're fairly comprehensible. And at times, depends on what time of the day and how many glasses of red wine, but there you go. I'm very driven by women's rights. You know, I feel that I've been given so much and I need to give back. I need to engage. I want to get off the sofa. I want to get off of apathy, and I want to, you know, roll my sleeves up and do something, which is what I'm doing now, and combining my artistry. And I've got a lot of plates spinning, and that's basically the way of my life. And I feel quite fulfilled doing that.
Annie Lennox, thank you so much for being on Hard Talk.
Thank you.